Hello everyone, welcome to the Distinct Mastering YouTube channel. Today we're going to do something different. I'm actually going to break down one of my songs. This is going to be my first ever track breakdown. And please do me a favor, if you're feeling this video, please shoot me a comment down below after you watch it and let me know. I go by an alias by the name of Freshcobar that I release music under. And if you're feeling these types of videos, I'll be sure to do more track breakdowns of my music. Just let me know in the comments what tracks of mine you'd like to see broken down. Now, let's get right into it. Okay, before we begin, I want to give you a little background to the story behind the track. If you haven't heard the track, I'll leave you a link down below, so I suggest you check it out. So our friends Drums of the Sun, Louis D and Bam Bam asked myself, Freshcobar, and Lavelle Dupree, who I produce a lot of music with, to remix one of their songs. This track ended up coming out on Ollie Sanders' label, Twisted Funk Records, and the remix has been doing great. It charted on TrackSource. It did some damage on the iTunes charts as well. I was checking my song stats and noticing that. And it seems to be one of those tracks that whenever I play it on the dance floor, it just works. So I suggest you go grab yourself a copy. I'll leave you a link down below. All right, let's get into the breakdown of the track. So here's my session. There's not a lot going on with this one. I'm going to give you a little background into the night that we did make it. It took one night. And I remember making the track after about 6 hours of work and looked at Lavelle and I said, I think it's done. I didn't add a ton of crazy effects. I didn't over mix this thing. Usually I'd probably go back and alter and adjust, and I probably did do a little bit of that. But to be honest with you, I just left it alone. There's not a ton of tracks. It's a lot smaller of a session than I probably normally would do. And it just sounded right. So that was it. I just said, we're going to call it a day. So let's get into it. One of the biggest things that I did different from the original was the placement of the actual vocal sample that they provided. So they sent us a bunch of stems, and I remember that I stripped everything. We went through the stems. I didn't really use any of them. I think I used one of their stems, which was a percussion loop, and I just left it all the way through. I wanted something besides the vocal to keep the element of their track since it was a remix. So there were 2 stems used from the original batch that they provided us. Now let's chat briefly before we get into the actual production of what we did. Let's chat briefly on how the placement of the vocal differs from our remix to the original song. Now in the original song, I'm going to go ahead and turn on the metronome and I'm going to play it from this breakdown right here. So as you can see, theirs starts right at the beginning when the vocal begins. And one thing that we did different was I know this sample and I started our vocal a little bit before. So I don't know exactly what they're saying, what this lady is saying, but when you say "Emin," that one begins there to me. And that was one of the distinct differences that I told Lavelle we were going to do, is move the vocal into the, at least what I heard as the right spot. And I know that's how the song is because I've heard this sample being used in other songs. So let me take off the reference and let me solo our vocal with the metronome on. So as you see, it comes in different, and that was one of the major differences. So after going through all their stems and settling on how to place that vocal to the metronome, I remember I'm going to bounce around a little bit. Instead of going from top to bottom, I'm going to show you the 2 stems that I used. Here's the other stem from the actual session. I'm going to turn off this metronome now. And as you can see, it's basically a stem laid out throughout the whole track as if it was taken straight from the record, which it was. And so their version was more of a techno version, and we went more world tech house. And so those are the only 2 things we used. So let's go ahead and play this breakdown with the vocal and that loop. And then right there, it doesn't even pop in. There's a little fill and another fill. That's it. So then you can see here, it says Matroda kick. I took a kick drum from a Matroda record, I guess. And as you can see, I filtered it way out. So it's just really a top kick. So let's bring this guy in. So it's just giving you some character there. Giving you a little heartbeat pattern over this break. Let's extend this loop to go over here. So what we're going to do to give you, we're going to start bringing stuff in. So I'm going to mute everything and I'm going to just give you the vocal. I'm going to give you that loop and I'm going to give you this top kick. And so here's the breakdown with the top kick. It's giving you a little bit of heartbeat. And then you got this fill. And boom, we're into the track. So the next step, obviously, you know, was to develop the theme. And I remember actually developing the theme before getting into the drums. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit and get into the bass line because that's the main theme of the track. Then we'll get back to the drums. I remember getting my Novation Bass Station hardware synthesizer little thing. I'll show you a picture so you can see what it looks like. I remember picking that up on OfferUp and I had it sitting on the desk to my right here. And so I remember plugging it in and playing around with it. It was brand new. So let's take a listen to what this thing is. As you can see, it's audio here. And I remember I had the bass station right here to the right and I was playing around with an arpeggiated sound and it just gave this character. And that's the sound. And you can see I've got a, let's bring this over here, a chop shop. It looks like I've got not much going on in the chop shop. Then I've got a Pultec. And I boosted at 300. That's it. What else did I do? I put a little plate reverb on it. So putting plate reverb on a bass line, sometimes I'll do that just to give it a subtle hint of a tail. Let's listen before. It's very staccato. And I think it'll sound better if you listen with the kick. So I'm going to talk about the kick drum next. So we have our top kick. We're going to go ahead and bring this guy in. I'm going to solo these. And the next kick drum that you see is called Story Kick. This is one of my kick drums from Story of My Life, which is another record of me and Lavelle's. And so if you're interested in these samples, shoot me a comment down below. I'm creating a NOS, No One's Safe, our record label's sample pack. I'd love to hear what you'd like to see in that. So let's go back to this bass. I'm going to take off this sub. And as you see here, with the reverb, it gives it a little bit of, just melts it into the track a little bit. And then lastly, I have a distressor here. Little compression. Just to get it more in your face. So very, very light touches on everything here. This is not even doing anything. There is a low cut on it. So then what I did, letting you listen to that groove, because really getting the main theme is the most important part when working on tracks. And so after getting that bass line, we were on our way, and boom. So then what I wanted to do was I wanted to give it a nice lower tone and a sub. So that's what this layer is. It's just a low tone right underneath the whole track. So I'm going to take away the arpeggiated Novation Bass Station. You might not be able to hear that unless you have solid big speakers with big woofers, because it's really low. Putting the two together, and that's what you get. Okay, so let me play you the kick drums and the bass line. And I have our vocals brought in. So now we're going to start going through, and we have this one loop. So we basically have 3 elements playing right now, and we're going to start talking about how these drums were laid out. So you see here, there's some toms. And here, there's another one. And boom, now we're getting into the core of the track. So let's get over here, loop this section. Actually, let's loop this whole thing. So what we have here is a low loop. It's a progressive loop. I probably took pieces of it. Let's see what I did here. Yeah, so I just took a little element of that. So this was how the track was basically built. Then we have this clap. Classic house clap. I EQ'd a lot of little things out of it. Pretty simple stuff. Finding the right sounds, not doing a lot of processing. You get the right sounds, you're on your way to the finish line, man. All right, so then we have this regular snare here with a little bit of a filter. There's the filters filtering up. We also have the output level filter increasing. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy, nothing out of this world. So then we have a 909 snare, and the reverb is increasing over time, being modulated. This filter is being modulated as well, both high and low. And this is the final breakdown of the track right here. Boom, it hits you again. Okay, so next, what we have is we have this whole bus right here of percussion. So let's get going through some of this and see what we've got. The first thing I see here starts right at the beginning of the track. So there's this percussion loop. Looks like I chopped it up a little bit. Took out some of the low end, made it a little wider. Ooh, I have two widers on this track. That's a mistake. And so you are seeing this live and direct with all of my mistakes. I should have only had one of those, so apologies on that. Must have been moving too fast. Unless I did that on purpose, I probably wouldn't have, but it is odd that I did it before and after, so I guess maybe I was just going for a little more width. Or I made a mistake. Next up is this Indian loop. And you can see here, let's solo this. Turn this up for you. I've got some EQ, made it wider. A simple-on, so just filtering and then side chaining. You can see that I side chained about 33%. So with everything, and let's bring that back and turn it on. So the volume, this is the context of the mix. Now this is a track that was done way before I was doing a K-metering system, which is I highly advise. I have a video on that. I'll leave you a link so you could check that out. Now I use a totally different template. It's much more advanced, and I do a whole K-metering system to level out all of my sounds. Very game-changing. Okay, next we have this global tech loop. Solo this. We'll go to the main part. And it looks like I just EQ'd out a bunch of 1K, my 900 hertz, 800 hertz, just a huge scoop. Got a little reverb, and here I just took some chops of it, and it's actually just the clap of that. If you see here, I just clipped out everything I didn't want. So I just wanted to use the clap in the beginning there. And that's how I gave it the impression that that loop is basically changing it up. So it keeps the listener interested. Plus, you know, I didn't drop with any hi-hats. And that's where the hi-hats come in. And all the percussion. So there's this one percussion running that was from the original stem. But then I bring in this loop right here. And boom, then we get into this next little breakdown. And what do we got going on here? We have this sound. So here's another loop. So this is more like shakers, and it looks Indian, drums and Indian percussion. And I let the whole thing play here. I have adjusted some of the, milliseconds, basically the sample start times, where they begin. It's basically, this trick is called track delay, and I use it often to adjust when samples begin or lag them or bring them in early. It helps me get things in the groove and really get things in the pocket. Obviously, I probably use some type of groove, but this track, I guess I did not. There's nothing in the groove pool. So I was creating my own grooves with this. So together with everything, let's play this. So you hear this shaker coming in this breakdown. And then we have this bongo that starts, let's see where that begins, over here. So this is in the second breakdown. Little bongo there and an India loop. This is a sample. This is from Contact. So this is, all right, so I'm going to get into this Contact instrument India Spotlight Collection shortly here, but I used a little hand drum from that. And that is kind of at the final stage of the track. How the last breakdown came together was by using the Contact instruments. So a little bit more on that later, but I did use it here in the percussion. So then moving on into, that's all this percussion bus right here. Moving into this top loop, I added something more here. So it looks like it's just giving you some more character. The whole thing is playing, sounds shaker-esque, giving you an additional layer in certain spots in the highlights of the track right here. Added a closed hat just to give it a little bit more piercing. And there's not even EQs on these tracks. That's what's crazy. Like, I remember flying through this song, and those are the best ones. Here I have a percussion loop, and I'm filtering out all the high end. So you're just getting that low end, bottom, tabla sounding. I really wanted this song to be very Indian influenced, if you will. Because of the sample itself, I used a lot of sounds that complement that. Then we have this clav right here. Let's go ahead and solo this. And you only hear it once there, and then you hear it here at the end of the song. And as you see here with the EQ, I don't usually go this sharp, but I did go sharp, and I all the way up at 2011 kilohertz. Just getting that nice top end of that clav. Then I have this Middle Eastern sample, and it's called Middle East, but it's another clav loop. So I must have had these playing off each other. And you see listening to them together, they're kind of doing this call and response thing with each other. Looks like I brought in a third one here. So this one is, it says clav loop, but it's more of a shaker-esque type thing. So all together, and that's just giving more enhancement in certain parts of the track. So as you see with these three tracks, I have them all playing at the final drop, but only some of them playing in the beginning of the song. So with everything together here, let's play it from the final drop. And that is the full, there's a little bit of odds and ends drums here, which we're going to get into, but that's really the main theme of the track. And that was what we built off of from everything. So obviously some of the drums are probably added, not in this order, but as the track was progressing. And so what do we have here? We have a crash. So just a simple crash. We have a reverse crash here. Boom. So you have those just to give it a little bit more character. You have this bongo fill. There's not even any, there's filtering on it, and it looks like there's some automated reverb, but there's no EQ, not much going on. Once again, very simple, to the point, just right sound selection. And when you see my bass a different color, it's usually because I've altered the transients. As you see here, I put this down to 50, so you're getting a bit more staccato sounding on these basses versus you're losing a little bit of your tail. So that's what I did in these breakdowns. And now we're almost fully there. So this track looks empty. Looks like I didn't even use it. I usually would clean this stuff up, but I must have missed it. And then we have this twinkle chime here at both breakdowns. So this sounds like this. It's just very high end. It's a sound that I use often, that I have sitting around in my library. And that tops it off for all of the drums. Okay, moving on into the session. I have some impacts here layered up, and I'll go ahead and solo these. That's all they are. There's 2 of them. There's not even EQs on them. They're just placed well in the mix. That's it. In this breakdown right here, there's a pad getting into some of these instruments. There's just a pad here that you hear once through the track. And it sounds like that. That's it. At this breakdown, there's like a sparkle pad. So you hear that that's just some really nice top end. There's no EQ on this one, but notice on this pad, I just took one of the channels. I took the right channel. And then here, I took a mid-side EQ, and I just took out the low end in the mono channel just to give it more side presence, which is interesting because I took the mono signal. And so let's see what that sounds like without this. I'm going to go back to that pad. Okay, so let's take some of this off. So there's the stereo sound. It probably had some phasing issues. So I took the right channel. Then I took low end out of the middle channel. And then I made it wider. So I basically took a stereo sound, made it mono, altered it, and then made it more stereo. Sometimes that's what you need to do to get things sitting right in the mix. It's a little tip for you. All right, so the rest of this stuff is really just odds and ends except for this main stuff right here in the breakdown. But one of the main sounds that really helped take this thing over the top was the use of this organ. Well, right here at the top, we have this one brass sound, and it just hit once in the track. I'll play it for you. That's it. And that's from Nexus. Then I have this organ here. So this is a unique sound because what I did is I took this organ sample, but I moved the sample start time over. And then it's got a wider and a little bit of sidechain and filtering. And what's cool about this is if you look at the MIDI, it has this kind of, it sounds like it's starting over. Boom, boom. I did that on purpose to play against the bass line and all of the percussion I have going on. It works very well together. Let me play that with it. Muted. So it really, let's start it over here. Just helps you carry along, and you know you're in another section. The thing that I did to play off that is I introduced this other female vocal, and let me play this by itself. Here it's filtering up. And as you can see by the clip, I've chopped out a lot of what it is. It's just this and it had more to it, but that's all I wanted. So with the organ and the when that section comes in, you're now in a different passage. You have that coming out. And then the just gives it more flavor. So going back more into some of this other odds and ends, we have this chord here. And you don't hear this much in the track. That's it. There's not a lot going on with that. It's just not even a lot of EQ work done on this track, which is rare for me. Usually I'll go in and do a lot more work with EQ, but if I've got the right sound and it's sounding the way I need, you don't need to go crazy with this stuff. Okay, now I'm going to get into some of the meat and potatoes of what really made this track stand out. This pluck right here, I created a serum pluck and then I layered it with an omni pluck. I'm going to solo these both. They're filtering up here. This helps the breakdown carry you through, and then when it drops, you get that final pluck. And here you hear them coming in. I'm going to play it over here. And I'm going to bring them in with the track. So you hear the vocal, everything's looping, the percussion is being hit hard. The 909 snare, everything's about to hit. And that's the final drop with those plucks. Now, what really made the magic happen is I'm going to get back to that contact instrument. I have this bus here called Indian Instruments, and all of these are from that contact library, India Spotlight Collection. And the cool thing about this is I felt like it made the track. I remember Lavelle was tripping out when I started playing it, but I was playing a sitar and a tanpura and a tumbi, as you see here. And all I did, you know, I loaded these sounds up, and I really love to use the Ableton capture MIDI feature because sometimes you just play notes and you hit magic. And so the capture MIDI feature is up here. And so if you just happen to play something perfect, sometimes it's off time, but it just fits, and you didn't record it, hit that button right there, and it's going to capture what you just played back. And essentially, that's what you got here. You got 3 sounds. You have this first one. And then I brought this in to call and response. And this tumbi is doing this. So together you have all of that in this breakdown. There's one more Indian sound right here, and this track looks empty. It looks like I didn't even use it. Another thing I should have cleaned up. And that's the what really to me made the track. There's this, another Indian Spotlight Collection sample. And like I said, even going through this, I'm just blown away at how little processing I used, little EQ moves I used. It really just came together in one night, and I didn't want to touch it. It was good. After mastering it, it sounded great. It hit on the dance floor. You know, this is just the production session. This isn't the mastered version, but you're getting an idea and a glimpse into how this track was fully made. So last but not least, you just have a very minimal amount of effects playing through the track. And there's another track here that I didn't even use, so that's a mistake on my part. Usually I'll color these yellow if they're not being used, or I'll delete them and clean them up. So apologies there, don't knock me. So I'm just going to turn on some of these effects. You have a sweep here, a noise, just some risers and pitch benders. And that's the track. I mean, there's really not much to it. All right, thank you so much. That was my first ever track breakdown. If you're feeling these types of videos, drop me a comment below and let me know you'd like to see some more. I'd love to hear from you. Also, please check out my alias Freshcobar on Spotify or any of your favorite platforms. I'll leave you a link. And let me know what tracks you'd like to see more of these breakdowns of. This is my first one. It was fun to do, and I hope it gives you some insights into sometimes you don't need to be all that complicated with your productions. You just got to find the right sounds and just, you know, find that good theme, and you're off to the races. So once again, if you like my content, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, the bell notification will keep you up to date. My name is Freddie from Distinct Mastering, also known as Freshcobar, and our record label is NOS Recordings, No One's Safe. Links down below. Have a good day. Peace.